Well, good afternoon and welcome to our second session of the Sea-Power Conference 2013. My name is Commodore Stuart and I have the very great privilege to be the moderator for this session. This session is titled The Asian Century and the Maritime Century, and you may wish to ask yourself, as our two presenters speak to us over the next 40 minutes or so, whether we have actually addressed these strategic issues coherently, whether the number of strategic policy statements we've made over the last 12 months are coherent in nature, or whether they're adequate in nature. And I think both our speakers are going to raise questions about their coherency and their adequacy. This morning, Captain Jones identified that he was going to brief some business rules on the questions and then promptly didn't. So let me address what the rules of engagement are for the questions when we get to question time, because I think that's got to be the key focus of what we're about in the presentation. Both our speakers are going to give us some ground setting. They're going to put their position to us, but I think it really is about how we bring those two positions together to measure what they are actually saying. Because what we have today are officers that have a principally academic background and a principally policy background, looking at a very similar problem set and drawing some conclusions. How those two conclusions relate with one another and what that means for our future, I think is something for us to really draw out through the question period. So I own the doors, and the doors will not open until 15:30. Therefore, we have to make sure that the question time we have is such that we can make sure that everyone moves out having had a fairly energetic question and answer time. The rules are simply this. There are 4 microphones around the room that when you nominate to ask a question, I'll identify you. A microphone will be brought to you. We ask you to identify yourself and then ask a question. A question is differentiated from a statement or a policy statement by actually having a question mark at the end of it. So those of you who wish to make a policy statement, please, there are other venues. We'll make them available to you. Can you keep your questions short, to the point, and directed to one of the speakers, particularly directing one of the platforms that they're asking. So we have 2 speakers today. Our first speaker is Professor Michael Wesley. Professor Wesley was appointed as a Professor of National Security at the Australian National University on the 1st of November 2012. He leads the National Security College's academic outreach and research program and contributes to a number of courses at the Crawford School of Public Policy. He has extensive experience teaching, researching and communicating on Australia's international engagements, particularly in Asia. Professor Wesley has published extensively and has authored several books on foreign policy. He won the 2011 John Button Prize for Best Writing in Australia Politics for his book, There Goes the Neighbourhood, Australia and the Rise of Asia. He was Executive Director of the Lowy Institute for International Policy between 2009 and 2012, and a Professor of International Relations and Director of the Asian Institute at Griffith University between 2004 and 2009, and has also previously worked in the Office of National Assessment. Professor Wesley's paper will look at the intersection of Australia's maritime geography with the anxieties of great powers to focus on the key geopolitical features and contests that will define the region's security in the 21st century, and perhaps ask the question, has our response been adequate, particularly in our recent policy statements?